Commander Laura Bennett stood at the main window of Earth Defense Station Alpha, her eyes fixed on the strange readings appearing on the holographic display. The coffee in her hand had gone cold hours ago, forgotten in the excitement of the moment. After 15 years of watching the stars, they had finally found something. "Commander, the object is changing course again," Lieutenant Sam Harris called out from his monitoring station. "It's definitely not natural movement." Laura nodded, her heart beating faster. "Show me the path projection." A holographic display expanded, showing a glowing line that curved through the solar system. The unknown object had entered their space near Jupiter's orbit and was now making its way toward Earth in a series of precise movements that defied normal physics. "Get me a direct line to Defense Command," Laura ordered, placing her cold coffee on a nearby console. "And someone wake up Dr. Martinez. She needs to see these energy readings." Within minutes, the station's command center was buzzing with activity. Scientists and military personnel rushed between monitoring stations, their voices a mix of excitement and concern. Dr. Catherine Martinez arrived, still pulling on her lab coat, her eyes immediately drawn to the energy readings. "These patterns," Catherine whispered, her fingers dancing across the holographic display. "They're using some form of quantum drive, but it's primitive compared to our current tech." Before Laura could respond, the unknown object suddenly dropped out of faster-than-light travel. It appeared just beyond the moon's orbit, its hull gleaming under the distant sunlight. The ship, because it was definitely a ship, was about the size of a small destroyer, with smooth, crystalline surfaces that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. "All stations, battle ready," Laura commanded, her voice calm despite the tension in the room. "But keep weapons powered down. Let's not start an interstellar incident." The alien ship hung in space for several minutes, seemingly studying Earth and its defenses. Then, without warning, a communication request came through their systems. "It's a standard radio signal," Sam reported, sounding surprised. "They're using basic electromagnetic wavelengths for communication." Laura straightened her uniform, put them through on the main screen. The holographic display shifted, and Laura found herself looking at a tall, humanoid figure with iridescent scales and multiple pairs of eyes. The alien wore what appeared to be a military uniform, decorated with symbols that probably indicated rank. "I am High Commander Krasthul of the Zaxian Confederation." The alien spoke in perfect English, their voice carrying a slight metallic echo. "Your primitive transmission signals have been monitored for some time. We have come to offer you the opportunity to join our civilization." Laura kept her expression neutral, even as she noticed Catherine rolling her eyes at the word primitive. "I am Commander Laura Bennett of the Earth Defense Force. We welcome peaceful contact with other civilizations." Krasthul's upper eyes blinked in what seemed like amusement. "Our scans indicate your technology is developing. Your attempts at quantum computing are particularly inefficient, and your fusion drive designs appear dangerously unstable by our standards." Behind Laura, Catherine had to stifle a laugh. The Zaxian commander either couldn't detect or didn't understand the quantum-fold processors that powered their station, or the zero-point energy systems that had replaced fusion drives years ago. "We appreciate your concern," Laura replied diplomatically. "Perhaps we could arrange a cultural and technological exchange." "There is nothing to exchange," Krasthul stated firmly. "Our civilization has mapped the theoretical limits of technology over 10,000 years ago. We have achieved perfection in our understanding of the universe. Your role would be to learn from us, to be uplifted from your current primitive state." Laura shared a quick glance with Catherine, who was now frantically typing notes into her tablet. The aliens clearly had no idea that humans had already broken past the theoretical limits they considered absolute. "The Zaxian Confederation offers you one standard rotation of your planet to consider our generous offer," Krasthul continued. "We have already deployed observer ships throughout your system to ensure you understand the seriousness of this opportunity." The communication ended abruptly, leaving the command center in silence. Laura turned to Catherine, who was still typing away at her tablet. Their entire civilization is trapped in a technological box of their own making, Catherine said, looking up from her notes. They've built their understanding of physics on theoretical limitations that we proved wrong decades ago. Did you notice their ship's quantum signature? They're still using linear quantum processing. They don't even know about quantum fold technology. Laura walked to the main window, watching as the alien ship maintained its position. Get me Defense Command. And contact every major research facility on Earth. I want to know exactly how far ahead of them we are in every field. Over the next few hours, reports flooded in from research centers around the world. The Zaxian ship's scans, while advanced by their standards, couldn't even detect Earth's newest defense systems. Their quantum technology was generations behind human advancement, and their understanding of physics seemed to stop at theoretical barriers that humanity had long since bypassed. "Commander," Sam called out, his voice urgent. "We're detecting multiple ships entering the system. Looks like they weren't bluffing about the observer ships." Laura watched as new contacts appeared on the tactical display. The Zaxians were positioning their ships in what they probably thought was an intimidating show of force. But from Earth's perspective, it was like watching someone bring swords to a gunfight. Except the Zaxians didn't even know guns existed. "Send word to all Earth defense stations," Laura ordered. "Begin powering up the quantum shield network, but keep it in stealth mode. Let's not show our full hand just yet." She turned to Catherine. "Doctor, I need you to prepare a full briefing on their technological limitations. If they're going to threaten us, we need to know exactly what we're dealing with." As the Earth continued its rotation, bringing night to the defense station, Laura stood at her post, watching the alien ships position themselves around her planet. The Zaxians thought they were preparing to subjugate a primitive species. Instead, they were about to learn a harsh lesson about making assumptions and the danger of believing you've learned everything there is to know. In her office, Catherine was already drafting a report titled Technological Divergence: Why Human Innovation Surpassed Zaxian Doctrine. On her screen, a comparison showed the vast gulf between what the Zaxians thought was possible and what humanity had already achieved. Tomorrow would be interesting, Catherine thought. Very interesting indeed. Dr. Catherine Martinez sat in her lab beneath the Rocky Mountains, surrounded by holographic displays showing Zaxian ship signatures. She hadn't slept in 24 hours, but the excitement kept her wide awake. Each new scan revealed something more fascinating about their visitors' technological limitations. "Look at this, Captain Walsh," she said, pointing to a rotating diagram. "Their quantum computers still process information in a linear sequence. They never discovered quantum fold computing." Captain Peter Walsh leaned closer to the display, his military uniform crisp despite the late hour. "What exactly does that mean for us?" Catherine smiled, pulling up another hologram. "Imagine two people solving a puzzle. The Zaxians solve it piece by piece, one at a time. We solve all the pieces simultaneously. Their computers are like old trains on a single track. Ours are like teleporting everywhere at once." "And they can't detect our systems?" Peter asked, stroking his chin thoughtfully. "They literally can't," Catherine replied, bringing up more data. "Their sensors are built on their understanding of quantum mechanics. It's like trying to see radio waves with a magnifying glass. Their equipment isn't designed to detect what they think is impossible." In orbit above them, the Zaxian ships continued their show of force, unaware that Earth's quantum defense grid was already active and watching their every move. The alien vessels moved in precise, predictable patterns that their doctrine said were optimal for space combat. Meanwhile, in the Pacific Ocean, the Earth Defense Force carrier Northern Light cruised silently beneath the waves. Its captain, Peter Walsh, had returned to his ship after the briefing. The massive vessel wasn't just a carrier. It was humanity's newest warship, capable of operating in space, air, and water with equal ease. "All systems check complete, Captain," Lieutenant Lisa Carter reported from her station. "Quantum drive is spinning up, Shield harmonics are stable, and weapons are ready but cold. Peter nodded, watching the tactical display that showed every Zaxian ship in orbit. Their visitors had positioned themselves in what they probably thought was an unbeatable formation. Keep our quantum signature masked. Let them think we're just another submarine. Across the globe, similar scenes played out as humanity's defense forces prepared in ways the Zaxians couldn't comprehend. In underground bases, orbital stations, and hidden facilities, Earth's true military capability remained invisible to their would-be conquerors. Back at Defense Station Alpha, Commander Laura Bennett received the latest intelligence report. They've deployed 30 ships in total. She informed the Emergency Defense Council over secure quantum channels. Their weapons are based on conventional physics, plasma torpedoes, particle beams, and what they call gravity bombs. All technology we bypassed years ago, General Richard Parker added from his command center in Brussels. Our quantum shields can handle anything they throw at us. The real question is, do we show them everything we have, or just enough to make them back down? Catherine's voice joined the discussion from her lab. Their entire civilization is built on the belief that they've reached the peak of possible technology. Showing them too much too quickly could cause a societal crisis. That's not our problem, Richard argued. They're the ones threatening us with conquest. Laura studied the tactical displays, watching the Zaxian ships maintain their rigid formation. We need to be smart about this. Their ships have crews, people who believe they're bringing civilization to a primitive world. We don't want to humiliate them if we can avoid it. As they discussed strategy, one of the Zaxian ships broke formation and moved closer to Earth's atmosphere. Within seconds, automated quantum sensors tracked its movement, while remaining completely undetectable to Zaxian technology. They're scanning our major cities, Sam reported from his station, probably mapping targets for their inevitable victory. Laura allowed herself a small smile. Let them scan. Their data will show exactly what we want them to see. A developing civilization with basic space capability and primitive quantum computing. In her lab, Catherine continued analyzing the Zaxian technology. Their ship's engines operated on principles that humanity had long since improved upon. Their weapons, while powerful, were predictable and easy to defend against. Even their communication systems were limited by their rigid understanding of physics. Look at this, she told her team, highlighting a section of data. Their entire targeting system relies on standard space-time calculations. They have no concept of quantum targeting or probability mapping. In a real fight, they wouldn't even be able to lock onto our ships properly. One of her assistants, Dr. Ryan Cooper, looked up from his own analysis. Should we be worried about their numbers? They still have 30 ships to our 20. Catherine shook her head. Numbers don't matter when they're fighting with outdated technology. It's like bringing a fleet of wooden sailing ships to fight a modern navy. They're not just outgunned. They're operating on completely different principles of warfare. As Earth's defense forces completed their preparations, the Zaxian deadline drew closer. High Commander Krasful's ship maintained its position near the moon, probably expecting Earth to surrender in the face of such overwhelming technological superiority. In the Northern Light, Captain Walsh conducted one final systems check. The massive ship's quantum drive hummed silently, ready to break every law of physics that the Zaxians thought they understood. His crew worked efficiently at their stations, confident in their training and their technology. Message from Command, Lisa announced. We have 90 minutes until their deadline expires. Peter nodded, studying the tactical display. Maintain stealth protocols. If they want to fight, let's show them why it's dangerous to make assumptions about primitive species. Throughout Earth's defense network, similar preparations continued. Quantum shields remained invisible but ready, weapon systems stayed powered down but primed, and communication channels stayed open through pathways the Zaxians couldn't detect. Catherine made one final note in her analysis before sending it to Defense Command. The Zaxians' greatest weakness wasn't their technology. It was their certainty that they knew everything worth knowing. They had stopped pushing boundaries, stopped questioning assumptions, and stopped imagining new possibilities. Tomorrow, she thought, they would learn that the universe was far more interesting than their doctrine allowed them to believe. The only question was how expensive that lesson would need to be. The deadline arrived with the rising sun over Earth's eastern hemisphere. High Commander Krasthul's face appeared on screens across Earth's defense network, his multiple eyes blinking in what seemed like disappointment. "Your silence is taken as rejection of our generous offer," he announced. "The Zaxian Confederation will now begin your technological uplift by force. Prepare for systematic disable of your primitive defense systems." Commander Laura Bennett stood calmly at her station in Defense Station Alpha. "All stations, execute Protocol Silent Shield. Let them fire the first shot." Around the Earth, 30 Zaxian warships moved into attack formation. Their crystalline hulls glowed with building energy as weapon systems charged. In lunar orbit, Krasthul's flagship directed the assault, its sensors still completely blind to Earth's true defensive capabilities. They're targeting major military installations, Strategic Director Michelle Rodriguez reported from her command center in Mexico City. Predictable attack pattern, just like their manuals probably tell them to do. The first Zaxian ship fired. A bright beam of focused plasma energy shot toward a military base in Nevada. The beam struck what appeared to be empty air and simply vanished. There was no explosion, no damage, not even a ripple in the atmosphere. On the Zaxian command ship, battle strategist Vex Moore stared at his readings in confusion. "High Commander, our weapons appear to be disappearing." "Impossible," Krasthul growled. "Their primitive technology cannot stop our weapons. Fire again, all ships." The Zaxian fleet opened fire in unison. Beams of energy and plasma torpedoes streaked toward Earth. Each weapon vanished silently, absorbed by quantum shields that the aliens couldn't even detect. Laura allowed herself a small smile. "Director Rodriguez, you may begin the demonstration." Michelle nodded on the screen. "Launching defense platforms now." Across Earth's orbit, hundreds of small objects suddenly appeared, seeming to phase into existence from nowhere. Each one was a quantum defense platform, previously hidden in a folded space pocket that Zaxian sensors couldn't detect. "What trickery is this?" Krasthul demanded, his voice carrying across all channels. "Your species does not have this level of technology." "Actually," Laura replied calmly, "we do. Captain Walsh, you may surface." In the Pacific Ocean, the Northern Light rose from the depths. Water cascaded off its hull as the massive ship lifted not just into the air, but continued rising straight into space. The quantum drive hummed silently, ignoring what the Zaxians believed were the laws of physics. "Impossible," Vex Moore shouted, his scales changing color in distress. "No ship can transition from water to space. The energy requirements alone." "That's only true if you're using conventional physics." Peter Walsh's voice cut in. "Your understanding of energy requirements is a bit outdated." The Northern Light took up position between Earth and the Zaxian fleet. Its hull showed no signs of conventional engines or weapon systems. To the Zaxian sensors, it barely registered as a ship at all. "This is your only warning," Laura announced to the alien fleet. "Your weapons cannot harm us. Your sensors cannot track us. And your ships cannot escape us. Stand down." Instead of surrendering, 2 Zaxian cruisers charged their main weapons and fired directly at the Northern Light. The energy beams passed straight through the ship as if it wasn't there. "Quantum phase shifting," Catherine Martinez explained over the channel, unable to resist a teaching moment. "Your weapons are passing through a space our ship isn't technically occupying at the moment of impact." Peter Walsh's voice followed. "Now, let us show you what our weapons can do." The Northern Light released a single small projectile. It moved without visible propulsion, ignoring the laws of inertia that the Zaxians held sacred. The projectile passed through the shields of one of the attacking cruisers as if they didn't exist. The ship's systems simply shut down, its lights going dark. "We call that a quantum lock torpedo," Michelle explained. "It shifts your ship's atomic structure about 2 microseconds out of sync with normal time. Don't worry, the effect is temporary. Across the Zaxian fleet, panic began to spread. Ships tried to engage their faster-than-light drives, only to find themselves unable to break free of Earth's gravity well. Some tried to fire their weapons, but each shot was casually absorbed or avoided. On his flagship, Krastal watched in growing horror as everything he believed about technological advancement crumbled before his eyes. How? How is this possible? Because, Laura replied, you stopped looking for new possibilities. Your civilization decided it had found all the answers. We kept asking questions. The Northern Light launched more quantum-lock torpedoes, systematically disabling the Zaxian ships that still showed signs of resistance. Other ships began powering down their weapons, their crews realizing the futility of their situation. Fascinating design on their shield generators, Catherine commented, still studying the alien ships. Very efficient, if you believe quantum fields can only operate in 3 dimensions. Of course, once you understand 11-dimensional space. Doctor, Laura cut in gently, maybe we shouldn't overwhelm them with too much theory right now. In orbit, the battle, if it could even be called that, was ending before it truly began. 28 Zaxian ships hung powerless in space, their crews watching in shock as their primitive opponents demonstrated technological superiority beyond their comprehension. Only Krastal's flagship and one other ship remained active. The High Commander's voice had lost its earlier confidence. How long? He asked. How long have your people had these capabilities? Long enough to know that true advancement comes from questioning what you think you know, Laura answered. Your ships will regain power in approximately 1 hour. I suggest we use that time to discuss a more equal relationship between our peoples. As the sun set over the Western Hemisphere, Earth's defense forces maintained their watch over the disabled Zaxian fleet. In her lab, Catherine continued studying the alien technology, finding new examples of how their rigid doctrine had limited their development. In the Northern Light, Peter Walsh's crew remained at battle stations, though the danger had clearly passed. And in Defense Station Alpha, Laura prepared for her first diplomatic meeting with a now much humbler High Commander Krastal. Sometimes, she reflected, the most powerful weapon wasn't technology at all. It was the willingness to imagine what others believed impossible. Chief Engineer Daniel Carter walked through the corridors of Defense Station Alpha, carrying his tablet filled with analysis of the Zaxian ships. The station now hosted several alien visitors, including some very interested young Zaxian scientists who had requested to learn more about human technology. Their entire power system is built on outdated principles, he explained to Commander Laura Bennett as they headed to the main conference room. It's like they found one way to build an engine 1,000 years ago and never looked for a better solution. The conference room doors slid open to reveal an unusual sight. Zaxian and human scientists working together at various stations. Among them was junior researcher Yentl, whose scales had taken on an excited purple color as she studied the quantum engineering displays. This defies everything we were taught, Yentl said, her multiple eyes wide with wonder. Your quantum processors operate in ways our theories said were impossible. Daniel smiled, pulling up a holographic display of Earth's quantum computing architecture. That's because you tried to make quantum mechanics follow classical rules. We learned to let quantum physics be quantum physics. On the main screen, they could see the Northern Light conducting joint exercises with several Zaxian ships, whose crews had volunteered to learn new tactics. The alien ships moved awkwardly, trying to copy the seemingly impossible maneuvers that the Earth vessel performed with ease. Watch this. Peter Walsh's voice came over the comm as the Northern Light demonstrated another quantum jump. The massive ship disappeared and reappeared instantly, without any sign of movement through the space between points. But the energy calculations, one of the Zaxian engineers stuttered. The power needed to break space-time. We don't break it, Daniel explained patiently. We fold it. Here, let me show you. He brought up a simple diagram. Imagine space is like a piece of paper. You were trying to burn through it with energy. We just folded and stepped through. In another part of the station, Dr. Catherine Martinez was holding a similar session with Zaxian quantum physicists. Many of them had initially refused to believe her explanations, but the evidence was hard to deny. "Your entire unified field theory is based on a mistake," she said, pointing to their standard model. "See, right here. You assumed quantum fields couldn't overlap in 11 dimensions. That one assumption limited everything you built afterward." High Commander Krasful, now much humbler than before, watched these exchanges from the station's observation deck. Next to him stood Laura, who had become something of a guide to human ways of thinking. "Our civilization's pride has cost us centuries of advancement," Krasful admitted. "We were so certain we had reached the peak of technology that we stopped looking for new peaks to climb." "It's not too late to start climbing again," Laura replied. "Look at your younger scientists. They're already adapting to new ways of thinking." She was right. Throughout the station, younger Zaxians were embracing human ideas with enthusiasm. Yentl had become a bridge between the two species, her quick mind helping others understand concepts that challenged their most basic assumptions. In the station's engineering lab, Daniel was showing a group of Zaxian engineers how Earth's quantum shield technology worked. "The shield doesn't try to block energy," he explained. "It redirects it through quantum space, where your weapons can't affect it. Like water flowing around a rock," Yentl added excitedly. "We were trying to make our shields into walls, but you made yours into rivers." The demonstration was interrupted by an alert from the long-range sensors. A new group of Zaxian ships had entered the solar system, reinforcements who hadn't received word of the recent events. "Here we go again," Laura sighed. "Though this time, we have help explaining things to them." Krasful stepped forward. "Allow me to speak to them. They need to understand what we have learned here." The new Zaxian fleet, consisting of 50 warships, dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Jupiter. Their commander was shocked to find High Commander Krasful's ships peacefully cooperating with the supposedly primitive Earth vessels. "High Commander," the new fleet's leader, War Director Mexcor, called out. "We received your distress signal. Are you being held captive?" "No, War Director," Krasful replied calmly. "I am being educated, as you are about to be." At a signal from Laura, the Northern Light performed another quantum jump, appearing instantly among the new Zaxian fleet. The alien ships scattered in surprise, their sensors unable to explain how the Earth vessel had moved without crossing the space between points. "Watch closely," Peter Walsh broadcast to the new arrivals. "Your sensors will tell you this is impossible. That's your first lesson. What you think is impossible may simply be something you don't understand yet." The Northern Light began a series of maneuvers that demonstrated human technology's superiority without firing a single shot. It phased through solid objects, ignored gravitational forces, and moved in ways that violated everything the Zaxians thought they knew about physics. In the defense station, Daniel and Yentl watched the display with the other scientists. The young Zaxian researcher was already predicting what the Earth ship would do next, having quickly grasped the principles behind its technology. "Your people adapt quickly," Daniel observed. "Some of us always question the old doctrines," Yentl replied. "We just needed proof that there were other possibilities." As the new Zaxian fleet struggled to understand what they were seeing, Catherine finished preparing a simplified presentation of human quantum theory. "Remember," she told her Zaxian students, "the universe doesn't care what we think is impossible. It only cares what is." The day ended with another diplomatic meeting, this time with both Zaxian fleets. War Director Mexcor found his worldview challenged just as Krasful's had been. The evidence was undeniable. Humanity had surpassed Zaxian technology by simply refusing to accept theoretical limitations. 1 month after first contact, Space Station Liberty became the center of the biggest scientific conference in human history. Dr. Amy Collins stood at the main podium, facing an audience of both human and Zaxian scientists. The station's quantum shields rippled with a soft blue light, demonstrating the very technology she was about to explain. The problem was never about power or resources, Amy said, pointing to the simple diagrams floating behind her. The problem was about imagination. You can't build something if you believe it's impossible. In the audience, Yentl nodded eagerly. The young Zaxian researcher had become one of the strongest supporters of human innovation. Her own research team had already begun combining Zaxian and human approaches to create new technologies. Watch this demonstration carefully, Amy continued. She pressed a button on her control panel. Above the station, a small probe appeared. This probe contains no engines, no power source, and no conventional technology. It moves using pure quantum state manipulation. The probe danced through space, moving in ways that still made some of the older Zaxian scientists uncomfortable. It passed through solid objects, split into multiple copies of itself, and even seemed to move backward in time. High Commander Krasful, sitting in the front row beside Commander Laura Bennett, leaned forward with interest. A month ago, I would have said this was a trick. Now I understand it's simply a different way of thinking about reality. Laura smiled. That's exactly what we hoped you would learn. It's why we didn't destroy your fleet when we could have. Knowledge is meant to be shared. At another part of the station, Chief Engineer Daniel Carter worked with a mixed team of human and Zaxian engineers. They were rebuilding one of the Zaxian ships with new technology, creating a hybrid of both civilizations' best ideas. See how the quantum field integrates with your crystal matrix. Daniel pointed to the holographic display. Your power systems were actually perfect for quantum engineering. You just needed to think about them differently. The Zaxian engineers watched in amazement as their ship's efficiency readings jumped to levels their old Doctrine had claimed were impossible. One of them, Senior Engineer Vixlar, shook his head in wonder. We spent centuries trying to force quantum mechanics to follow our rules, he said. You spent centuries learning to follow its rules instead. In orbit around Earth, the Northern Light conducted training exercises with a group of upgraded Zaxian vessels. Captain Peter Walsh watched with pride as the alien ships began to grasp the basics of quantum movement. They're learning quickly, Lisa Carter noted from her station. That last formation was almost perfect. Peter nodded. Once you stop believing something's impossible, it's amazing how quickly you can learn to do it. Back in Space Station Liberty, Dr. Catherine Martinez joined Amy's presentation. Together, they unveiled humanity's latest breakthrough, a complete unified theory that bridged the gap between Zaxian and human understanding of physics. This is the future, Catherine announced, showing a complex but beautiful mathematical model. Not human technology or Zaxian technology, but a new science that takes the best from both our peoples. Yentl rushed to the podium after the presentation, her scales glowing with excitement. The quantum crystal interface you described. We can use that to improve our medical technology. Our healing pods combined with your quantum field manipulation. Amy grinned. Exactly. Now you're thinking beyond the old limitations. Throughout the station, similar scenes played out as both species shared knowledge and ideas. Young Zaxian scientists worked alongside human researchers, each learning from the other. The rigid doctrine that had held back Zaxian technology for centuries was finally breaking down. In the station's command center, Laura received an unexpected message from the Zaxian homeworld. The Confederation's Science Council had voted to completely overhaul their technological development program. They were abandoning the old doctrine in favor of a new approach based on human principles of continuous questioning and innovation. They want to establish joint research centers, Laura told Krasful. Not just here, but throughout both our territories. The High Commander's scales shifted to a warm golden color, a sign of deep satisfaction. A month ago, I came to conquer what I thought was a primitive world. Instead, I found teachers. Michelle Rodriguez, monitoring the progress from her command center on Earth, compiled the latest reports. Zaxian ships equipped with hybrid technology were already performing better than either pure human or pure Zaxian vessels. The combination of human quantum innovation and Zaxian crystal engineering was opening up entirely new possibilities. "Look at this," she called to her team, pointing to a success story. "The Zaxians just used our quantum principles to solve a power distribution problem they've had for 300 years. They didn't need new technology. They just needed a new way of thinking about the technology they already had." As the day drew to a close, Amy and Catherine joined Laura and Krasfold in the station's observation dome. Earth glowed below them, while the upgraded Zaxian ships performed their exercises in the distance. "What happens now?" Laura asked, watching the ships move through their quantum-enhanced maneuvers. "Now," Catherine smiled. "Now we all keep asking questions. We keep looking for new possibilities. And most importantly, we never again assume we know everything there is to know." Amy nodded, pulling up one final display. It showed the combined fleet of human and Zaxian ships, their different technologies working in perfect harmony. "This is just the beginning," she said. "Imagine what we'll discover now that we're working together." As if to emphasize her point, one of the Zaxian ships successfully performed its first solo quantum jump. The cheer that went up from both humans and Zaxians showed just how far they'd come from their first hostile encounter. To new possibilities, Krastol raised a glass of earth wine. "And to never stopping asking questions," Laura added, completing the toast. In the vast space above them, human and Zaxian ships continued their dance, each movement proving that the only real limits were the ones they placed on their own imagination. The age of rigid doctrine was over. The age of endless possibility had begun.